Today on Locked On Red Wings, we talked about how the Wings could be better on Monday. Today, we got to look at the flip side of the coin. How can the Wings be worse?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. And as I said in the cold open there on Monday, we did the reasons why the Detroit Red Wings may be better in the 2025-26 season. And today, Scotty and I will bring you our reasons why they may regress or be just as good. I don't know if regression is necessarily in the cards, but they might not be any better at bare minimum. So we'll give you those reasons today. But first, I got to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Scotty, how you doing? Happy Wednesday, buddy. Happy All-Star game, as we were recording this before. You got to see Tarek Skubal on the mound. That's going to be exciting for you.
Yeah, hopefully. 6 representatives, first time in a while. So actually 7 if you include Frankie.
I was going to say, you're counting Frankie. We need to see a fit check for Frankie.
Dude, he posted a picture earlier, which, he looks posted up and ready. So
there you go.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, we're not looking forward to this conversation that we're having here on today's episode as we kind of look at the negatives with the Red Wings roster construction, and I think there's no really better place to begin than the 2 glaring holes that still need to be filled that we've been talking about even before the offseason, honestly, coming down in the winding days of the regular season. The top 6 forward situation and the top 4D. If you want to look for a place to begin with why this team may not improve or may even regress, it's there, right?
Yeah. If we're just listing off reasons, I think there's a fair argument that, if you were to rank them, that the blue line is at the top of that. I think there's certainly a conversation to be had about the lack of filling in the top 6, and there's certainly still some question marks in net. We think it should be a positive compared to last year, but everything or nothing rather is a guarantee. The blue line is one where I think that could be a train wreck, dude. Like it could legitimately be a complete and utter disaster. Now the floor, I think. What can prevent it from hitting that low of a floor is just the fact that, assuming health, you have Seider and Edvinsson for a full season. And that is going to, prevent you from maybe being like the worst blue line I've ever seen. But outside of that, it's really not great. And I think you have to separate them just for the sheer sake of depth. I don't know. I really do think that if off-season moves are done, which is an if, right? Like we'll see how the rest of the summer plays out heading in to camp in August. But like, if this is the roster on opening night and this is truly just it, I think this defensive unit has the chance to be, like, quite frankly, really, really bad.
Yeah, it's if you're looking at the roster up and down, it's the biggest glaring weakness. And we've talked a lot about needing a top 4 defenseman on this team, and that's still a huge need because, as you put it, like right now we're forced to split up Edvinsson and Seider. Now, at the end of Lalonde's tenure and at the end of McClellan's first season, they ended up reuniting them because I think they realized like splitting them up might be doing more harm than good because now you're splitting up your best defensive pair. It could also just be that they realized Ben Sherratt's not necessarily a top-pair defenseman, but you're kind of in a no-win situation right now where like splitting them up kind of reduces the effectiveness of both pairs, or it reduces the effectiveness of the top pair rather, while marginally increasing the effectiveness of the second pair. But bringing them together means that your depth down the rest of the defensive core for the other 40 minutes, 35 minutes really, that those two aren't playing, you're just like shrugging, and that speaks to the issue that the defense has. Obviously, getting another top 4 defense pairing, a top 4 defenseman, will help trickle down the depth and improve everyone on the depth chart on the defensive side of things. But like you look at your third pairing too, you're looking at a rotation of Gustafsson, Bedard Docker, and Justin Holl. We don't know what Bedard Docker is. He took a flyer on a guy for very cheap. People think he has a lot of upside still, but I think he's starting out your season on your third pair or as your 7th D-man. Gustafsson is Gustafsson. He's fine in a sheltered role, and Hull's fine in a sheltered role. But it's extremely sheltered roles that they have to play. And granted, your third pair is always going to be the most sheltered. But to the extreme in which they are is the problem. You shouldn't have a third pair you have to shelter as much as they are being sheltered. And that just means harder minutes for your first pair, which Ben Sherratt's proven to this point. And I think I'm fine with Ben Sherratt overall as a player. He's just over-deployed. He shouldn't be on your top pair. But because you got to shelter your third pair, you got to put Ben Sherratt out there in more meaningful minutes on your top pair. And Albert Johansson's he's a serviceable second pair defenseman. Hopefully he can take a step forward in his game, but he's a little undersized, and that's going to constantly probably hurt him. He's a good puck-moving defenseman. I like him a lot, but I'm just not sold on him as being a second pair option long-term. So you have holes in every spot in your lineup on the defensive side besides your top pair left side and right side D-man. And I say I'm including Edvinsson in that. You're playing him on your second pair, but he's your top pair left side D. You just can't afford to have them play together. So, if you're looking for the reason one why this team is going to either stay the same or even to possibly take a step back, it's just because the biggest question mark didn't get filled. And we've talked about it too, right? Like, this free agent class sucked. It was brutal. Everyone either re-upped with the team that they were already with, or they had their hearts set on where they were going to go. And the trade market's dwindling fast. Like, Bowen Byram avoided arbitration, and they agreed on a 2-year deal that's going to take him to UFA. So he's off the market. Now it's like, okay, who's left? You got Erik Karlsson, and who else is even being talked about right now? So you need to... I don't know how Yzerman's going to do it. I don't know who's left available, but he's going to have to get creative to try and solve this, because if you're not giving yourself a very good opportunity to get better if this is the defensive core you're trotting out on game one.
Brother, this time last year, we were trying to put, we were on Puckpedia, or maybe it was still cap friendly at that time, but we were on whatever we were using, putting together the blue line and doing, what is are the defensive pairs going to look like? Last summer, when we did that exercise for an episode, we were putting Ben Sherratt on the third pair. We were like, this makes sense. He'd be really effective in that role. A year removed, he's now slotting in as a top pair defenseman. Like, we were going into last season, we were trying to put him in the bottom pair. He's a year older. And we're talking about putting him on, playing 24 plus minutes a night this season. Like, this is not good, man. Like, it's really, really bleak. I think it's a massive issue, and I think, exactly, what you said. I really think that if there was one glaring, biggest, if you will, reason as to why this team might not be able to take a step forward, it is probably because the blue line isn't good.
And there are some internal options, right, the Red Wings could use to get better on the margins. I'm not entirely sold ASP is going to be NHL ready, but he could use this offseason to really work on the glaring weaknesses and surprise us all. Hopefully he does. And then you may have your second pair solution internally, but I just think he's going to take a year in the AHL. I think William Wallinder and Shai Buyam are NHL caliber defensemen, but I see them probably... Buyam might have second pair ceiling, but it's more than likely him and Wallinder are going to be good third pairing defensemen. So you're flush with defensive prospects that are projecting outside of ASP for your third pair, then you're going to have a good third pair. That's great to have, but it doesn't solve your need at the top of the lineup. So shrug my shoulders. It's just reasons why this team might not get better, and they may regress. It's the blue line. The blue line is the number one reason. And we should talk about the top six stuff too, because you do need a top line winger. And I think, again, there's options out there in the trade market still. And I think there's internal options too, but I'm not sure any of those guys are what this team really needs, in that being a superstar winger right now. But we'll talk about that in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. And if you're tired of endless scrolling, you can trying to find the best deal. Game Time Zone Deals pick out the best seats for the section that you're looking at. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? The app will show you panoramic seat views, so there are no surprises. With Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay with no hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and Showtime tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Scotty, we talked a lot about the defensive situation, but this team, while I think that their depth has improved, and they're just missing that one true top six winger. And they're going to have to try and fill it in the aggregate. And honestly, I mean, ideally, they have a superstar. And hopefully, Lucas Raymond can take another step forward in his development. He had 80 points last year. I think after the Four Nations break, he was hurting. A lot of players coming out of Four Nations was hurting, and that's why his scoring pace definitely slowed down, and he slumped near the end of the season. But, you know, out of anyone in your top six, he has the biggest superstar potential that you got. But you still lack a winger to play on that top line with Larkin and with Raymond, and that is a huge glaring need. Now, the question becomes, Scotty, are there players on the free trade market? Are there players internally that could fill that hole? Sure. But I don't know if any of those couple young players that might be long-term issues, but staring at this roster right now, that's a hole that I don't know if they're going to be able to fill. And that, again, same conversation. Yzerman is going to have to get creative, because if you walk in with James Van Riemsdyk as your top line left winger, 36-year-old James Van Riemsdyk on day one, you're, again, not setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, and I feel like the episode we did on Monday was very like reasons why they could, like we're hoping that a couple of these things can be true. Like there's a chance that all these things in this episode just are true. Like there's it's not like one or the other, or like, nope, that is your blue line right now. And on top of that, you don't have anybody to play top line left side. Like you just don't. So yeah, I obviously that's a big problem. And you mentioned how they will fill that hole. I don't know. I think you could be even a little bit more dramatic with it and just say like they need a top line winger, like specifically. If they get if they want to move Marco Casper to top line wing because he produced there, that's fine. And then they need to still you need to find a solidified second line center, obviously. But like we both agree, we talked about this earlier in the offseason, that we want Casper to play second line center, and that's the best for his development. That's where his value is most utilized because he's a two-way player. That is where we want to see him. Okay, well, Cat almost had 40 goals. What about moving him up? No, his production came a lot with Patrick Kane on the ice with him. So you want to keep those two together. It's not even as broad as like, oh, we need to add a top six talent. No, you need a top line left wing. Like you need to find somebody that can play that specific position. And to your point, that those don't grow on trees, man. That's a good player. That's a really good player. If you're looking at like playoff teams from last season, those are some pretty darn good players that filled that role for the teams that made the postseason last year. It's a massive hole for this team, and we're going on year 2 or 3 of them not being able to fill it.
Well, and so the nice thing here is that the trade market and the internal options to fill that role are a little bit stronger than it is when we had the defensive conversation. So there's still conversations about Jason Robertson may or may not be available. Jordan Cairo, I know he's technically a right wing, but if you get him, you can maybe move Raymond over to the left,
sure.
or Cairo maybe over to the left, because there's conversation of the Blues maybe wanting to move on from him, as I think they soured on him this year in St. Louis land. Internally, there's still Rustin Raquel out there, a little bit older, kind of mid-range, couple-year options, but are still producing good on good cap hits. Internally, your options are JVR, Mazer, who can move up and down the lineup, probably a bottom six player. That's what we project him as, but he's got the type of motor that he can at least be a Band-Aid patchwork option. Soderblom as an option, Berggren as an option, Kopp. None of those guys jump off the page as long-term solutions. Your biggest hope right now is that aside from getting guys like a Jared McCann or anything like that out there in the trade market, that you have Nate Danielson make the jump, and in his first full year in the NHL, he's playing on the wing, which is pretty common for centers, right? To get used to NHL speed and whatnot, NHL strength, you play on the wing. Same thing happened with Larkin, happened with Casper last year until he moved into a center role full-time. He was playing on top line wing with Larkin. Or you have Casper up there on that top line, and you move Kopp to second line. So really, your best opportunities to get better on that position is Casper or Danielson fill that hole, or you make a trade from the outside. Because while guys like JVR, Soderblom, Kopp, Berger, and Mazer can fill that role, one of them will have to fill that role. If someone's gonna have to play on that line, they're not like ideal fits. So I think ideally here it's Danielson or Casper. If Danielson takes the leap, or you make a trade. And that trade market, at least there's still teams out there that are willing to move players where there's not much left in the defensive market. And that's kind of what I'm looking for here. I think there was a report from Frank Saravelli the other day that the Red Wings are still looking to add a top six player, them and like 8 other teams. But that's no shock by any stretch of the imagination. So it's a huge hole, but at least one where there's options that they can fill, it feels like.
Yeah, there are obviously options, but there's like you said, somebody's going to have to play there. Like they have, we're listing options because they literally can't just send 2 guys out there. Like somebody is going to have to play that role. So of course we're brainstorming, who that's going to be if a move isn't made.
But right now there is no move. So
right, exactly. Like that doesn't mean that it's like the ideal or even smart option. I think pretty comfortably the best case scenario here is to bring in someone externally.
Yes, I agree. Scotty, next thing on the list, we got a couple minutes here. Do you have a short conversation we can have about any of these things that are rattling around in our brains?
Yeah, I think one of the other ones that I had on my list was this one can be quick because it kind of is all encompassing, is just like you didn't add enough this summer. And again, we still have time to make a trade, etc. We keep stressing that like this doesn't have to be the opening night roster right now. But I think that kind of covers all bases a little bit. Like we went into this summer with the mindset of this team needs to add talent. You said it on the show. I said it on the show. This was a really big offseason for Yzerman and for the front office. I can remember in May, us talking about that and saying those exact words. And the fact of the matter is, free agent market depleting because of re-signings or not, this has not been a very big offseason. And it doesn't make it fair. But like you have to do something. You cannot just keep, as like Prashanth put it when he was on this show, you cannot keep wasting the years of this core. You can't waste another year of Larkin. You can't waste another year of DeBrincat that is not under contract for as long of term as everybody else. You can't, use another year of like Seider and Raymond. Like you have to make legitimate additions to this team and get creative and find some way to do it. Like I said, doesn't make it fair, doesn't make it, like an awesome situation for a front office. But I think you're at the point in this rebuild or in this roster construction where you have to find some way to do so.
We're going to do a quick break. When we return, we'll cover the special teams too, because just as this team may get better if the PK improves, this team could hurt if the power play regresses. Stay tuned. Segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Scotty, this one I've thought about for a while. I want to talk about the power play because while I think it is presumptuous for Red Wings fans like ourselves to assume the power play is going to finish top 5 in the league again, I think it's safe to assume it may regress a little bit. I also think that it is insincere, disingenuous to assume that may be a reason they regress. Just simply by the fact that this is 2 years in a row, this power play has been very good, and these power play units, at least the top unit, is going to be largely the same. So if the power play takes a huge fall off, then yes, it would be a reason why we regress. That's just not something I'm predicting or think is going to be a whole. Rather, I think it has to do with the PK not improving as much as I'd like, right? I talked about the reasons why this team may improve. On the flip side of that, if this PK doesn't take, I don't expect them to be 32nd in the league again, that terrible, but they had a solid, 4 or 5 months under Todd McClellan where the penalty kill maybe marginally got better, then came back to being one of the league worsts. If McClellan's system, when implemented, doesn't solve the problem and they're just that bad defensively, I think the reason they may regress may just be because it's still not enough the power play is still not enough to overcompensate for that PK and the lack of 5-on-5 scoring, because I don't see a lot of ads to their defensive side of the puck. Like Mason Appleton was like the one ad, right? Who's going to play PK minutes. The rest of those units are going to be largely the same still.
Yeah, I actually think this is a direct correlation to another point that we had talked about, when preparing for this show, which is 5-on-5 production, right? Like it isn't really fair to say like, oh, the power play is going to go from second best to like worst in the NHL or anything like that. It's largely the same group. I think, I don't expect them to necessarily be fighting for the best power play in the NHL again, but like they should be solid. The problem here is, as you mentioned, the penalty kill was terrible, and they almost canceled each other out more so than legitimately, benefited the team. But on top of that, you have to get better at even strength, because if you are going to just rely on the power play to get all of your scoring throughout a year, it's going to look a lot like last season. And you're going to go through hot stretches and cold stretches, and you're ultimately going to fall short. They have to improve at 5-on-5. They must. And I think that you almost have to, again, like regression to the mean. Like, that's not to say that the power play is going to be terrible or anything, but assuming that it's going to be like this top 2 unit in the league, like absolute juggernaut, I think is I don't know. I think it's irresponsible if the front office is doing that. Like you have to say, okay, how do we prepare to score more, even if we shave off a few points of this power play? Injuries happen, stuff happens. You have to be able to still be able to put the puck in the back of the net if the power play isn't at a whatever it was 32% clip or whatever. Like that is, I think, a fantastic point, and I think it directly correlates to them needing to be significantly better at even strength as well.
Right. They were 27th. They were 29th in even strength scoring this past season with just 168 goals at even strength. So that's 5-on-5, 4-on-4, and 3-on-3. And they were 19th in goals against. So 19th fewest goals against, which, puts them 14th for most goals against, if you want to flip that on its head. either way, they're in the bottom half of the league in goals against. Actually, not as bad as I expected in the goals against category, considering how many games they spent in their own end for the bulk majority of those games. But because they spent the bulk majority of those games in their own end, they weren't scoring enough goals. They are an undersized forward group. They are a fairly slow forward group outside of Raymond and Larkin, really. And this is where I do think, if I'm being fair, right, the upgrades to the bottom six will improve, because a lot of the time last year, the scoring was at even strength put upon the top line of Raymond and Larkin to get those goals. And DeBrincat and Kane as well, and the bottom six wasn't contributing at all. I think with the addition of youth to this bottom six, as well as JVR, assuming he plays in the bottom six, and Mason Appleton, they will be a more productive bottom six. They'll be better about getting out of their own end in those minutes where they're placed there. They'll be better about, which will make them better in transition and going up the ice, scoring more goals at even strength. So I do think they will be marginally better, but this kind of goes back to the top six conversation. Marginally better because your depth scoring is better is not going to be enough to get you into the playoffs. You need top six scoring. It all kind of ties back to the fact that you do still lack that top six and top four players. Where I am still optimistic too, though, is that you're going to have your first full training camp of Todd McClellan. So that gives you an opportunity to fix your PK. That gives you the opportunity to play a new system that will benefit them at 5-on-5. So I am optimistic in that, okay, we have a new head coach who hopefully will implement a type of system that will make this team play better at 5-on-5. But when I'm looking at player personnel, I still just struggle to see them being able to take a massive leap with the hole still on the roster. And it all comes back to that. And I think, Scotty, the biggest issue, the biggest reason outside of those holes on the roster why they may either not get better or regress is something we have not yet talked about, and that is the division. And that is something we brought up last year, and it feels like every single season it becomes a more and more emphasized reason. Boston is trying to retool. I'm not sold that they're going to be really any good, but they're going to be fighting to be in the mix. Buffalo every year is fighting to be in the mix, even though they always end up near the bottom of the standings. Montreal took a huge leap forward last year, and I do think there will be a little regression to the mean with them, but I still think they're going to be very much in the mix. Ottawa finally took the leap, and I think that they're there. I think that, obviously Florida, Toronto, even with the loss of Marner, and Tampa Bay aren't going anywhere in that top three conversation. And you play those teams the most. There's not a single team in your division right now that is embracing tanking. You don't get the easy points like the Pacific Division was for years, with Anaheim and San Jose being at the bottom of the division. You have to scrape and claw for every point you get, and with those teams each trying to make moves to get better themselves, and a lot of them, I think, making better moves than Detroit. Not that Detroit made bad moves, but just making better moves than Detroit. I struggle to see how you're going to claim more points from those teams without your team getting better through free agency or trade, and those other teams, at least on paper, doing so themselves.
Yeah, I don't have too much else to add even. I completely agree. You, unfortunately, are in the hardest division in hockey, on top of the struggles, that we've already listed. So, I mean, you want to just compare rosters and just go pure talent, right? Where does this roster stack up in terms of talent? Certainly not in the top four as it stands right now. So
maybe not even the top five.
Right. It's an uphill battle, and that is, certainly not going to help anything else we've listed today.
So, yeah, and I mean, you talked earlier too about how I almost feel more confident that they've kind of remained where they are rather than taking any kind of step forward. Obviously, we did the reasons why they may improve next season, but I feel like there's fewer reasons why they may improve than reasons why they will stay put or regress, and that's a pretty crappy feeling to have. And there's a lot of reasons why. It's a whole different other conversation, right? Talking about free agency, talking about trade, talking about the lack of impactful moves, or talking about where you did decide to spend your money in seasons past. And just you could go back. I mean, it's irresponsible, I feel like, at this point to go back to it. But just you have a roster pool, prospect pool that's full of really, really, really good talent, but nothing that's elite. And part of that goes back to when you were in your full tank and tear down and rebuild phase. There was never really that top end talent there available for you. And if there was, you fell in the draft. So it's just, you're in the mushy middle right now. And there's a lot of factors as to why. And it's just,
well, it's also the most populated area in the NHL, right? There are more teams in the mushy middle than
at the top of the bottom.
Right, than anything else. That's why it's hard to crawl out of. That's why taking that leap to being a great team is so rare and does not happen most of the time. So it's like you gotta go, all to the wall there and add some more talent.
Right, and the mushy middle even extends into playoff teams, right? Like the Minnesota Wild are a mushy middle team. They always make the playoffs and get eliminated in the first round. Like, it is really hard. This is a tough league. It's a really tough division, and it's on Yzerman to try and figure out some kind of solution. So,
agreed.
Scotty, any final thoughts?
We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode on Friday, so stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.